Well, good morning, everybody. First of all, just a quick apology. I know I'm a little bit later than normal. Got in last night a little after 1 a.m. and on Pacific time, and so just need a little bit more rest to get things going this morning. But it was kind of fun. I flew in last night with a group that was from Fairbanks, Alaska. And it was interesting because we're standing outside here in Reno and the temperatures were in the 40s. And this guy was like just shedding clothes. He's just taking off his coat and he's just down to a t-shirt and shorts. And I asked him, I said, Isaac, it's not that one. He goes, oh man, we're from Fairbanks and we lived there for 30 years. And so I said, okay, I get it. I didn't tell him what I did for a living, but we started talking about weather. And it was so fascinating to listen to them talk about the weather in Alaska and just, how I complained about us missing the sun over here in Illinois. They're like, well, they only have about 4 hours of daylight right now. Where they live. So they were pretty happy to get out of Alaska and come here where it was quote unquote warm because the temperatures were, believe it or not, 80 degrees warmer here in Reno than they were in when they left Fairbanks. So just a fascinating thing to think about here. Also, I do want to apologize if you hear my neighbor's television. They've been up watching the news very loudly all morning. And because I didn't get my pro mic before I left, it's actually sitting at home. I can't wait to go home and use it. You might have to listen to the news this morning. All right. The thing we have to talk about right away here is just thinking about, this idea of redistributing the temperatures, right? We've talked about this. How long does this very mild air, because this is a 5-day forecast, okay? How long does this very mild air hang out in the center part of North America? Well, I've made a case that you got to dislodge the cold air in Alaska and Greenland, and we cannot have flow disks come screaming in here out of the west, something like this that splits in order to get cold air back into place. We're going to have to wait for this pattern. I think one of the big things we'll be waiting on is the tropical connection with it. So, we go back to the same idea. Some of the models are just forecasting the MJO to just kind of stack up and stall out here in the Western Pacific. And we've told you it's got to come around into these phases to get the support from the tropics in order to do that, right? If you really want to get cold air, it takes a combination of events, and it takes some changing around of the ridge position across the northerly latitudes. It takes, pressure changes across the Arctic, and it really takes the tropics to get into configuration that lets that happen. So it's usually a series of events that takes place to allow that to undergo a change. And I'm just not projecting that change to happen until we get past the middle of the month. Some of the longer range models a little bit more disappointing in their forecast. This is where the European Extended is taking the MJO today in phase 7 instead of sweeping it out at higher amplitude, possibly curling it in by the end of the month back into null space. And if it does this and rolls right back out into phase 7, the chances of getting any sort of extended Arctic outbreaks at the end of February are pretty limited. So I'm waiting on some sort of trigger to give you new information about the long range. And that's what I'll be waiting on. So most of our focus will be short-term forecast here for both North and South America. And right now, a lot of the attention is going off to the west. Just watch this animation from yesterday. Look at this deep low just spinning here. You can still see it in the, of course, the infrared and the overnight. And this is a powerhouse of a low. And it's one of two that are going to be hitting the west coast here over the next, let's just call this 5 or 6 days. Just thinking about how this is going to roll through. Next big one's going to come this weekend. And I got a great question yesterday in the comments. I always read all your comments. Sorry I don't get a chance sometimes to respond, but I do read them all. And one of the great comments I got was about the positioning of these large lows with respect to jet stream patterns. So I'm gonna go in and dig into that question here in just a few moments. But I want to show you that when you think about the hazards we got across the country, most of the colors are going to show up in the western United States. So this was as of 7 a.m. Central Time. It's 5 a.m. out here on the West Coast as I'm recording this. And I just want to show you that we've got winter storm warnings out for the Sierra Nevada, and we're going to be picking up a lot of snow. I think there's upwards of 4 to 6 feet possibly coming to the Sierra Nevada. That's a big event for the Sierra Nevada. We have a lot of flood watches, high wind watches, and warnings. This extends into Nevada, and this will eventually get out into the plains and move its way toward the Midwest, where we're still dealing with the flooding problems from the last large system, that rolled through. So with that as a setup, I want to show you how strong these winds are, because there's actually two coastal systems to pay attention to. There's the first one here, but watch off the southeast coast. So we're just adding up what are called, wind gusts, cumulative wind gusts. So in other words, as I use the forecast model to make this, if the wind gusts get stronger, I replace it. That makes sense? I just keep showing you the max. And we will be seeing winds offshore here. There'll be places that'll be, we call this hurricane force, right? It's above 74 miles an hour. Very strong winds. There will be very strong winds, as you can see, throughout California and Oregon, at times over the Rocky Mountains into western Texas, which this is quite common. But then take a look here just off the coast of parts of the Carolinas, Georgia, Florida. Very strong winds there. Let's show when they're going to come through. It's right here. Monday, there it is. Tuesday, Wednesday. See it? Tuesday, Wednesday, we're going to have to keep an eye on what's happening just off the shore here. But if we just take our attention back over here to the west, because that's really where I think most of the patterns being written right now, just have a look at these deep lows that are just spinning out there. And they're all sitting on the northern side of a pretty powerful subtropical branch of the jet stream. See it? So there's a trough here on the northern side, and there's a trough there on the northern side. And the question I got asked is about exit region dynamics. So when I say exit region, what I'm talking about is sometimes, well, this is a really long example, but we'd say it enters over here and exits over there with shorter jet streaks, okay, not these that extend from, Japan all the way to California. In fact, you got a second? I'm just curious. Let's do this. Flightaware.com. Love this website. Sorry, my internet here is just not as speedy as I like it to be. But I was watching a flight yesterday that was in these winds that was going from Japan to LAX. And if we can get this to fire up here this morning, I'm curious. Let's see if we got any great ones out here across the ocean. I don't know. I'm just going to pick one. How about this guy right here? He should definitely be in the jet stream winds. There we go. Okay, so 3 minutes early, expected to get 16 minutes early. It left Seoul going to Atlanta. We kind of did this the other day, but it is fun to look at this. Yeah, he's definitely in those winds. 773 miles an hour, planned 558. I saw one yesterday that was supposed to come into LAX that was going to arrive an hour and a half early because of those winds. So it's just amazing what they're up to. I like doing that. Okay, but jet stream dynamics. Now watch this. This is another way of viewing it. So that is what you just saw, all right? And we've been talking about this all week. In fact, we've been talking about it for feels like 2 or 3 weeks. There's the split. See it right there? Look at that. And this comes in on the southern side and exits here. Now, what we're going to watch for is the first big push happening over the next couple of days into the west right there to see the nose of that jet pushing that in. Now, if we get out here to the second go, this is the one I want to show you. Saturday into Sunday and Monday. Now, watch this. By Sunday night, do you see this small area of enhanced wind speed here? What you can do is you can take those little jet streaks. There's one there. There's another one here. There's another one there. There's here. See where they all are? And you can take them and kind of running across them like this, draw a line that splits it and draw another line that splits it like this. Now, here's what I want you to think. I'm going to put D's in this quadrant here called the left exit and a D here in the right entrance. I'll put a C there in the left entrance and a C here in the right exit. Now, what's the point of doing that? D's represent divergence. Divergence aloft. We have an imbalance in the geostrophic wind. We call it the ageostrophic component of the wind. And what it's doing here is it's allowing for the pressure to drop, the atmosphere to decompress. It's splitting. It's vacating this area. And this is happening at 6 miles above our heads at speeds of, 150 miles an hour. And what happens there then is that the atmosphere, to fill this in, okay, this void, it just pulls air in at the surface from all directions to fill it in. And where that commonly happens, where it's most effective, is right here in this exit region on the left-hand side. So this will enhance later this weekend a deepening low over Southern California. And that'll be the second big push. Now after that, this finally gets into the southwest. See it there? And then it moves over the mountains and into the central United States, February 7th, 8th, and 9th. But because we don't have a polar branch to this jet, it's all subtropical here. There's nothing coming out in this direction. This is primarily going to be opening up still under mild conditions for a lot of rain into parts of the plains and Midwest eventually as we get out there to like February 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th. And then we're going to watch what could be a bit of a jet retraction here. Okay, so notice how it's not extending all the way to the west coast. And then we got to pay attention to this ridge. That would be the ridge that if we could get to open up into Alaska might finally, after we get past the end of the month, not the end of the month, the middle of the month, deliver some cold air. So that's your catalyst for change out of this pattern. Okay, near term, let's go to the high-res models. Let's get this parked out here, maybe midday today. We've got showers over parts of the Carolinas. You're going to have some snow that moves into New England, and you're going to see that coastal kind of rain band here from that front sliding into the west. So let's play it forward through tonight. Getting into early tomorrow morning on Thursday, look at the flow coming over the Sierra Nevada. We'll take a look at just how much snowfall there. Heavy rains across coastal California down into Southern California. And you're going to see a lot of just speckled here indications of ice. There's no ice. This is just a feedback in the model. But you can see the low trying to curl up there Thursday afternoon and evening, spreading its snow into Nevada, coming out of, into Utah and also into Arizona. And then as we play this forward, there's a frontal boundary stuck here, but seems to be an artifact. I went out and looked at several other forecasts. I'm not worried about icing in this area right now, okay? But that gets us out there to midday Friday. All right, from there, I want to give you kind of a compilation of model forecasts for just how much liquid is in this. So this is using the latest from the WPC forecast. And again, we knew we had a drier corridor here and probably down here in this part of Texas. But where that frontal slide out here, you'll see how much rain we're expecting, but I want to take a look at California. Coastal regions, and by the way, all three of these next maps, this one included, will have the same color bar. Different projections, but same color bar. And what you notice is that Southern California, the Sierra Nevada coastal parts of California, could be looking at this like 6 to 10 inch range possible on precipitation. Now, is this uncommon? It isn't. California knows that these kind of events happen in winter. Is it problematic? Yeah, it's a lot of rain and it's going to cause a lot of flooding. And that's why the flood watchers are going to continue to show up. And when this happens, we'll see flood warnings out for this area. It is important to note that California is still drought free from two big events that happened like this last year, plus some of the summer precip that came through. Okay, how about the other maps? This is the European and this is the GFS, and these two are on the same projection, okay? So this is a curated product from the National Weather Service, and what you got here is raw model output. So we're just looking back and forth at these. That's European, and that's the GFS. We compare those two models. Remember, when we look at these maps, this is wetter in the GFS, this is wetter in the European, comparing models. So just note the GFS is wetter here, and the European's wetter farther south. And out west, the GFS is much more aggressive on the snow in the Sierra Nevada, whereas the European's more aggressive on the rains in the Central Valley in Northern California, whereas the GFS is wetter in Southern California, kind of just pinpointing some of these differences in certain spots. Okay, with that as a backdrop, I want to come back to something my friend and colleague Matt Reardon is doing. Remember, I talked about this. We just have these time periods where the models perform well and then they fall off. And here we are. We just did this from mid-January to now, and they're starting to do this again, reducing predictability. And it seems to always happen when there is a large kind of catalyst of change, which makes me curious if we do finally get some cold air second half of this month. Maybe it's not even till we're deep into the third week of this month, but just something to think about there. So from there, though, I want to show you the models. You just saw that their performance is dropping, but let's compare the GFS to the European to get some timing on this. So playing through Wednesday into Thursday, we've already watched this. There comes that first big onshore flow. Now remember, we're going to watch the nose of the jet late this weekend as all of this moves over the Intermountain West and starts to deliver on Friday evening some showers into the Central Plains, okay? What we're going to watch for is system number 2. So here's Saturday, getting into Sunday. At that point, the low is starting to take shape. The stalled out frontal boundaries here, though. I want to wait to see how much snow we can get up into Montana, out of Idaho into Wyoming. We need this snow up here bad. It is in both models, okay? But as we go forward, this is now Sunday midday, Sunday evening, and then we get into early Monday morning. See the low? Remember, the jet streak came in like this. We carved it up. There was a D right here, and that's where our upper level divergence is and where the low sits. This is just really good. I'd call this 200 level meteorology. We try to teach it at 100 level at the university, but it's really solidified at the 200 level when we can get into geostrophic flow and what it means. Okay, so Monday into Tuesday, 2 lows are curling up. Can you see them? We've got one that's curling up just off the southeast coast. This is the wind maker here. And then we have the one that's coming into the west. This is Monday night into Tuesday. That's just going to be adding potentially tremendous amounts of snow to the Sierra Nevada. I'm just rocking back and forth over Monday and Tuesday of next week. So then what we'll watch is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, something's going to come out into the central United States. Don't have the details on it just yet, but we'll keep an eye on that. So let's pin this down with some snow forecast now, since we've already looked at the rain. And just adding this up, round one comes in. We're looking easily picking up a couple of feet in the Sierra Nevada, highest peaks here. But we know that as we get toward the end of the week, the snow levels are going to come down. They're pretty high to start the week. They're going to come down to maybe 2,500 to 3,000 feet by the end of the week. And then, with the cold air established, watch the second push. Here we are on Sunday. The second push comes in right there, Monday, Tuesday, and really starts to add up more. Let's park it out there at a week just to also see where the snow's coming into parts of Montana, Wyoming, into Colorado as well. This is a good snowmaking system for most of the mountains in the west, save the Cascades where the flow just isn't getting into that area. So that's a week out in the European. This is a week out in the GFS. And now remember, the GFS was much wetter. So what are these totals like in the peaks? In the GFS, well, my color bar stops at 40 inches. So we're looking at 4 to 6 feet possible out of this system. So just take a look again at these two maps. There's the European and there's the GFS. Overall, decent agreement, a little bit different up here in the Canadian prairies where I see the biggest differences. Now, this isn't to ignore other parts of the country with my analysis today. It's just I'm trying to highlight, I think, what the bigger event is coming into the U.S. Oops. So if we get here, and I just want to show you what the European model is trying to do for the West. I have a couple of these regional maps across the country. I need to make a lot more of them that just show what the total amount of precipitation could be. If we just take this out to 4 a.m. next Wednesday, we can now put some numbers in inches on top of this. Now remember, we use this as a ballpark. We don't use this as gospel truth here. But it's just to make a point that in the model, there is enough liquid down here for looking at 5 to 8 inches. And we can see here why we expect 4 to 6 feet of snow. On a 10 to 1, that's, there's 4 to 5 inches of liquid in that. Same for this part of Northern California. So just wanted to show you the West and what was expected here. It's also good to look at some probability maps. So chance of 4 inches is where I'm going to start today. And over the next 10 days, the probability of 4 inches is quite high in coastal California and in the Sierra Nevada. Stepping it down to 2 inches, now we start to see widespread heavy rains throughout the West. And you can also identify this corridor here and a little bit over parts of the Southeast. And there's your chance at 1 inch over the next 10 days. On the drier side of it, probability of getting less than 1/10. Now, there's a lot of folks in this area that are just perfectly fine with it, given how much moisture's come in. Well, let me refine that drawing. A lot of folks here that are probably fine with it. We need more moisture in the upper Midwest. We need more moisture getting into the northern plains as well. Plus, note how dry compared to average western Texas is, too. Now, beyond this, day 10, it's just going to be the evolution of this trough. So it's this trough that we think is helping promote better moisture into week 2 in the middle part of the country. But, wrong setup downstream to make this as a much bigger wave than it could be. As we just go forward, what I'll be keeping an eye on is February 12th, 13th, 14th. Do we actually push a ridge here and dislodge some cold air? Models are trying to hint at something very late, but in the forecast time period, it's about 2 weeks, but I don't know. It's going to take so much to really disrupt this pattern. But as it stands, week 2 brings in moisture. You can see from the CPC, the European, and the GFS are all trying to put this somewhere into the central part of the United States and into the Midwest. So just take a look at that week 2 outlook. All right, from here, let's talk temperatures, because it is another very, very warm one in the midsection of the country. I couldn't believe I landed in Dallas yesterday, and it was 78 degrees in Dallas. I almost felt hot. But as we play through Thursday and Friday, it's the same story. Look at all the warmth in the midsection of the country. The west cools off first. This is what helps bring those snow levels down in the Sierra Nevada by the weekend system. But next Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, it's kind of the same story written again and again here if you're in the center part of the United States. Now, just thinking about that, we got snow on the ground. I talked about it yesterday in parts of the Midwest. So I want to show you the 0Z European model run on snow depth. So what's nice about this is it'll show you where it's going to accumulate and also show you where it's going to melt. So as we play this forward, I'm specifically looking right here right now. I'll tell you why in a second. But as I play this out here through Thursday into Friday and Saturday and Sunday, the models are suggesting, now this is just the model, but it's suggesting that over the next week, we may be able to eliminate the snowpack in parts of Nebraska, Iowa, South Dakota, maybe just leaving a little bit in southern Wisconsin here, just because of how mild things are. And what I'm concerned about, and this is the point, is that is the area where we haven't seen the recovery in that root zone moisture because so much of the snow is just sitting there. The water hasn't gotten down. We'll be very interested. I will be very interested to see what this is going to look like in about 10 days' time. Now, to add to this, just some other things we keep up with. The Mississippi River this morning is now 18 feet above low stage, so that water is getting down to the river and flowing through. We're quickly approaching up here where we'll start talking about the river flooding in places, given all the water that's coming. That's how quickly these big river systems can change. But the reality of it is that day 5 through 10 into day 10 through 15, there's just a lot of mild air in this pattern. We have yet to see the things constructively add together to dislodge a lot of cold air and bring it south. It may not be until, again, after mid-month that could possibly happen. One of the big reasons is we're kind of stacked up here with our MJO. The subsidence in this area, the rising motion kind of somewhere in this area, and it's not hyper-focused and moving around. And if it stays like that for a while, I just don't have a reason to tell you that there's going to be a big significant pattern change for a while. So that's what I'm waiting on, okay? So quickly on South America, I wanted to take you down and show you what's happened over the last month, because I made a comment yesterday that I think that the Argentinian crop is insulated from the heat that's coming through. What I mean by that is that heat like this could be extremely damaging to a crop if it were more vulnerable. But over the last month, we've been wetter in here. And that includes, Cordoba and Santa Fe and Entre Rios. I mean, these are big growing areas. Buenos Aires has been drier, okay? And that's a big growing area as well. But I'm just trying to point out where we may have got some insurance in this crop with respect to moisture in the soil. Does that make sense? Because we know it's gone over drier and we know it's going over hotter. And I want to show you from one of my favorite websites called worldagweather.com, where in Argentina they're forecasting soybean temperatures to average daily temperatures in the 80s and low 90s. Look at that. Okay, so that means daytime highs well above 100. We showed you that yesterday. But when does it start to go back toward average, which is right here? Maybe February 8th or 9th. And so, if we have 8 or 9 days of really, really hot temperatures, is it massively is it massively detrimental to the crop? That's a question I have, because I think the crop in Argentina is not as vulnerable as it could have been. That's my argument with it. But I'm not going to deny it's going to be hot and it's going to be dry. If we add up the rainfall, I'll just take you out here a week. I mean, you can see we're not expecting much other than storms to just pop on the heat that does happen, right? But where it's wet is to the north. It's a little bit drier in the northeast. So we'll have to keep an eye on this too in terms of the way that the soybean crop finishes and the new crop of corn goes in. I can't wait to get those new planting progress numbers on corn from Mato Grosso, which should come out Friday afternoon. So I'll keep an eye on it, and I appreciate your attention today, and we'll talk again tomorrow morning. Thanks.